time. Welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre The Beast Crayton Show. Today, I am excited. Why? Because we have one of the greatest wide receivers that ever played the game. And let me explain to you when I say one of the greatest wide receivers. We're not talking about stats. We're not talking about yards after catch. We're talking about a contribution to your team, a contribution to life after football and before football. This man defined odds. I watched him. I seen a guy that was not even bigger than 6'6" go out and make major impacts on the football field day in and day out, showed up every Sunday. And I'm blessed that he took the time to come on to the show to share his story with us about how he is considered one of the best wide receivers in the game. And mark my word, a Hall of Fame ballot. I'd like to welcome to the show, Mr. Don Beebe. Welcome to the show, Don.
Hey, Andre. It's glad to be here. I appreciate the kind words.
Hey, well deserved for you. We was talking off camera about your journey from high school to college, but before we get into that, let's talk about you in general. Who exactly is Don Beebe?
Well, the first thing that I would tell if somebody wanted to know who I am, I'm a man of faith first. I don't ever want to screw up that priority and put myself first or anything other than my faith in Christ. And that's who I am. I feel like I try to be as humble as I can. I want to pay it forward. I want to give it back to the community that I grew up in Aurora. That's why I coached high school at Aurora Christian High School as a volunteer coach. And now I'm at the Aurora University, local university here, which is a D3 program. And I absolutely enjoy what I'm doing every single day. I don't think I have ever had a bad day of work in my entire life, Andre, and that's the honest truth.
When you say Aurora, this is in Illinois, correct?
It is. Yeah, it's about 45 minutes west of Chicago.
Why Aurora as
Yeah.
your final place, as your place after the NFL?
Yeah. Well, I was born in Aurora, and so was my wife, 8 months apart. We met in kindergarten.
Man, we're gonna talk about that. That's crazy.
so our whole family is in Aurora. I come from a really big family, and Diana's, my wife's family, is here too as well. And so that we had no choice. Mom and dad, still alive, 86 and 85, would never let me live anywhere else. So I'm stuck in Aurora until for a little while.
Was football always a part of your childhood growing up?
No, actually, I didn't like football much at all. I played in the backyard and it was great, but when it became to the organized football, my first time I ever put on a helmet was my freshman in high school. I was a basketball junkie.
Really?
I mean, I wanted to play in the NBA. So, but it was my senior year, and this is why I kind of got into coaching, Andre, is because my high school coach, it was his first year, my senior year, and he changed the whole outlook on football for me. And if it wasn't for him, I'm not so sure I would ever play college football. I would have went college basketball.
What did he do to change it? What did he do?
You know, he invested in young men. You know, you can always tell when a coach invests in the team, and it's not about them, and it's not about whatever, just a job. I mean, he really came in and loved us and cared a lot about us. And because of that relationship, he's now on my staff. I've been a college coach for 5 years. He's been on my staff since day one. I brought him out of retirement. He's a Hall of Fame Illinois high school coach.
How in the heck did you get him out of retirement?
Yeah. It was tough. He told me on the phone when I asked him, he said, Donnie, and everybody that knows me personally calls me Donnie. He said, you're the only guy I would ever come out of retirement for. And it was a great compliment. So coaching with him has been quite the honor.
When you brought him out of retirement for a reason, so I'm going to ask this question. What did he bring to your life? Because you were into basketball, and I can relate to you because I had the same thing happen during my high school year. What were some of the things that he said to you that resonated from high school to college to your NFL for you to really come back and get him out of retirement?
Yeah. Well, I have a picture up in my office that reminds me quite often. And it was when he first got there, after, I want to say, a week of practice. And I'll be honest with you, I was really interested. My dad kind of forced me to go off football.
Really?
Thank goodness for smart dads. Um, and I got this picture is me kneeling in the end zone right after a practice, and he's kneeling right next to me with his arm on my shoulder. And I remember the conversation like it was yesterday. He
Okay.
just said, Donnie, he said, Donnie, I love you. I just want you to know, I don't care what's been done in the past. He says, I think you're an outstanding football player that could be an all-state, get your college played for or paid for type player. And he
Really?
believed in me. And it wasn't just words. I mean, you could genuinely see that this man really cared. And boy, that just resonated with me big time.
But did you believe in yourself? Because you're now switching to something that you didn't want to do. Was your dad a football player?
No, my dad wasn't an athlete at all.
But here's
Yeah.
a guy that said something to you. But the bigger question, I'm pretty sure the audience would say, did you believe in yourself? Did you believe you had this ability to transition from something you never played to take it to that level that expectations had for you?
Yeah, this is a really good question, Andre, because this is something I preach all the time. Initially, no, I didn't. I second guessed certain things, and it was a learning process for me. And this is where parenting and coaching at an early age comes in very important.
Okay.
That you have to build up your son or your daughter, and how you do that, because you can go overboard with it too, where the parent is so invested they're going to do whatever it takes.
Right.
I think that acts as a disservice as well.
Mhm.
But my parents did it, I think, the right way, in the sense that they were always there for me. They supported everything I did. But my dad said, listen, I'm not going to send you to a camp, or I'm not going to, do this if you're not invested. That means you, Don, have to get up in the morning to go train. And it's got to be your life and what you want. Whatever you want, I'll support. It wasn't world living vicariously through, his son.
Right.
Um, and I did the same thing with my son, Chad. Uh, Never did I sit down and watch football games with my son, ever. I never watched any of my old footage or my games or anything like that. It was his story. And if he wanted to be it, I would help him, but it had to come from him. I was not going to wake him up. I was not going to push him or anything of that nature. He was going to wake me up to go train in the mornings.
Really?
And that's what it was. And then he landed up having the career that he did.
So you wind up with at least one of the journeys happening. You wind up going to a college, Sharon State,
Yeah.
way over in Jesus Christ. No telling where this place is at, because I told you, where is this located? How did this
It's
opportunity happen for you?
well, first of all, how did I end up at Shadron State was when I first came out of high school, I went to Western Illinois. It was the only school that gave me a full ride scholarship. Okay. So I went there. I hated it. It's still the worst 2 weeks of my entire life, that fall camp.
What was worse about it?
Well, it was it. I first of all, I wasn't ready for the college scene. I wasn't ready to take off and go to college. I was kind of a homebody. Hate to say it, but it's the truth. Well, I don't hate to say it now, but back then I probably would have hated to say it. I was girlfriend sick, man, and
Oh
she's now
yeah.
my wife. My wife of 37 years. So it was it was good leaving. Let me just say that. Well, long story short, I left right away. I sat out of school, worked construction for 3 years. Western Illinois calls me back 3 years later and invites me back. And to be honest with you, that's a miracle in itself that they call me back after 3 years. And now being a college recruiter and head coach in college, I would never call a kid out back 3 years later. Never going to happen. So, but I went back, and I didn't know my time clock in the NCAA was being used up. So I was out of 3 years, didn't know it. So I
Mhm.
only had 2 years left. Went back. They said I was ineligible, lack of transfer credits, had to leave again, go back to a JUCO, then transfer back with 1 year to play in the national or NCAA Division One.
Right.
But the reason I went to Shadron, because I had 2 years left at the NAIA, and at that time, Shadron State was an NAIA school back in 1988.
Okay.
And so the head coach at Shadron recruited me when he was at Western Illinois in 5 years previous. That's how I got out there.
Did you like it there?
Initially, no, it was a culture shock coming from the Chicago area to the end of the earth. I was like, no, I hated every second of it.
You got homesick for real, didn't you?
But I grew to love it, Andre. The people out there are incredible. I love Shatter, Nebraska. I try to make it out there every so often just to, show my face because I graduated from there. I got my degree there and I love it.
How far is that from Lincoln, Nebraska?
Oh, it's so, gosh, 7 hours. It's
7
on the other side of the state.
Really?
Yeah, it's way out there. I always tell people it's about an hour and a half south, 2 hours south of the Mount Rushmore in South Dakota, Rapid City, South Dakota.
When did you're in college? When did the NFL start to surface in in your journey?
Yeah, my senior in high school. And I go back to my high school coach who kind of changed the perspective for me that I was really good at football because I really didn't know. And he changed my way of thinking that I could be really good at it. I was already very athletic and I can run and all that stuff. And my basketball ball handling drills, I used to do the Pete Maravich basketball drills until my fingertips bleed. And that's the honest truth. And I think that developed me to have the hands that I had landed up having because I had great ball skill with the basketball.
Hey, Don,
Yeah,
Don, a lot of people may not know who Pete
I
Maravich
know.
is.
I know. That's okay. That's okay. Google them. You can find out. But in saying that, my senior in high school, I had a real passion to do that. Even though I left the first time, it was for not because I hated football, it was because there's other things more important to my life at that time. But it all transitioned. That's where I relied on my faith.
So when you get, let me call it out the way it should. You're on the clock. The NFL draft is a lot different than when you was at the draft.
Yeah.
So the third round is coming. This is the 1998 draft class with the 82nd pick. The Buffalo Bills picks Don Beebe. What goes through your mind?
Well, let's backtrack a little bit. So first of all, after the 1 year at Shatter, and I only played 2 years of college football, I got invited to the combine in Indianapolis. Now think about that for a second. How in the world is a guy like me from Shatter State, Nebraska, going to get invited to the combine? There was a man named Bill Giles who was a combine scout, and he was the Midwest scout, and his job is to go out and find the top 300 guys, right?
Right.
Well, again, coming back to how in the world am I going to get invited? Well, he timed me to his dying day. He never would tell me. But from what I've heard, it was a 4.2 something. So he said, I'm going to give you my highest recommendation. Well, he must have given me a big recommendation because I got invited 2 weeks later. So I go into this as a complete unknown. I had no agent, didn't even know what an agent was. I didn't know I needed an agent.
Right.
And the day I got there, the next day, I had to run the 40. I had no idea what I was going to do when I got there. And all I went there with, Andre, was my old ASIC fishing shoes from high school. And the right sole, and this is the honest truth, the right sole of that shoe was half unglued. So when I ran, it flopped.
Oh, my God.
That's all I had. Now, I did not know this to be true because remember, 1989, no media, nobody could get inside that dome. Not like today.
And I live in Indianapolis,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So you couldn't get in. So nobody really knew who ran what. They posted that night on ESPN that I ran the fastest time in a 4.39, but that wasn't true. What I didn't know this until 3 years after I was retired. I was training some guys for the NFL Combine, and I was there. I was sitting up in the box with Tony Dungy and Bill Polian, who at that time was the general manager of the Indianapolis Colts.
Right.
He drafted me out of Buffalo when he was at Buffalo in 1989. Well, anyway, he said, "Hey, Beebs," he said, "you and Dion still hold the record." And I said, "Well, what are you talking about?" He goes, "Well, the 40-yard dash, you ran a 4.25 here in 1989 along with Dion. You both ran the same time."
What?
That record stood for 17 years until Chris Johnson broke it with the 4.23. Now some guy owns it at 4.21. I think they just broke it this year. Well, let's put this in perspective. How in the world are you going to go from a complete unknown, barely getting invited to this thing, to a team's first pick, break the all-time NFL record in the 40-yard dash? That's how. And then tie it with Dion that year. So it was quite a journey and something that had to happen for me to get drafted that high.
So when you do get drafted, what goes through your mind? Because now that's a major spectacle now. I mean, millions of people watching, and I get it. Evolution happens.
Yep.
The NFL is, it says it in the bottom script, for entertainment purposes.
Yeah.
Where were you at when you got called for the third round, 82nd pick?
Yeah, so I was in our 800-foot square. They call them mother-in-law houses. They were a house behind a house that I rented for $100. Not kidding you, my rent was $100.
You can't get that
And
now, Don.
oh, it had a kitchen, a bedroom, and a family room, 800 square. That was it, one bathroom. I had 21 family members out at that place in Shadron during draft day. And when they called my name, I picked up the phone, and it was Coach Levy. Picked it up and he said, "Hey, Don, I just want you to know we just took you as our first pick in the 89 draft." And I kind of just said, I was honored. I appreciate that. I think I was so naive, Andre. I didn't know what to expect, to be honest with you. I
Really?
really didn't.
Did they tell you was going to go in the first, second, or third round? You already knew?
Yeah, well, this time a month and a half after the combine, I had an agent, and he said from what he was hearing, I was going to get drafted anywhere from the first to the fourth round, most likely second to third, is what he said.
Let me ask a question. You and Dion ran the fastest time. When that
Yeah,
happened, I remember Dion made the headlines.
yeah.
Were other teams aware that you had ran the same identical time as Deion Sanders?
Oh, everybody did. So what happens is there's the official time on the field, but then you have probably, good night, 200, 300 watches in the stands. Everybody's got their own time.
Right.
So everybody takes their own time. The official time was 4:25 by the guy on the field.
When you get drafted, and what was the first thing that you had to do to prepare yourself from college? Because we wasn't getting paid in college back then. A lot of people don't understand.
Right.
We got a scholarship. You had to work a
Yep.
little bit too. But
Yeah.
now you're getting ready to make money. You're the first pick. That's a lot of that's guaranteed money because you're the first pick.
Yeah.
How did that change you? And what kind of advice were you given by your agent compared to what you see now when guys go to get drafted? They're decked out in gold and $1 million in diamond and jewelry. It looks like half of their paycheck is already gone. What kind
Yeah, I
of
know.
were you given when you got drafted?
Yeah. Well, this goes back to what I said a little bit earlier, was how grounded I was because of my mom and dad. I was raised right.
Okay.
I was raised in a home to be humble, and others come first. We live in such a selfish culture nowadays, Andre, as you know, and that's just not how I want to raise my kids. It's certainly not how I coach the guys that I coach, and I got to give credit to my father and my mom too. But my dad was a big influence and still is on my life. The wisest man I've ever met, and I was fortunate to have that. So it didn't change me at all. Nothing was going to change who I was as a person. The outside worldly things that you can get from this world, to be honest with you, in my life are kind of empty. True value and true contentment in my mind can only come through Christ and family. And I don't ever want to lose that perspective.
When you talk about the 89 draft, who were you
Yeah.
going up against? Who were some of the top 10 athletes in that era?
Yeah. So in the wideout category, obviously it was Andre Rison, who me and Andre became teammates at Green Bay, won a Super Bowl together with Andre. Great guy, love him to death. Hartley Dykes was another guy that he came, I think, Oklahoma State, I believe. These were some of the top wideouts in that class. But, the 89 draft itself was Troy Aikman, Deion, Barry Sanders, Tony Mandarich from the Green Bay Packers, who had all that steroid stuff. And
I used to train Tony.
yeah, so it was one of the greatest drafts of all time, 89. A lot of big names.
Yeah, I really liked Troy Aikman because Troy Aikman and Steve Walsh came out the same time.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, wow, this is from a Cowboy standpoint, I'm like, wow, that's kind of cool. You got a number one that you trained with Jimmy Johnson, but you also got the rifleman. You got Troy Aikman.
Yeah.
My biggest thing was, which one do you put on the field? I'm thinking, yeah, because I love Troy Aikman, but I also saw what Steve Walsh could do when he took Miami to the national championship. When you went to Buffalo, who did you have to actually compete against? Because just because you get drafted number one, a lot of people don't understand it. It doesn't mean you're going to play.
Yeah. Well, it was when I went there, Audrey Reed obviously was the number one wideout and always was throughout my career there. And then there was a guy named Chris Burkett, who was number 2 at the time, and Flip Johnson was number 3, and I was on 4th on the depth chart right at the beginning of camp.
Mhm.
And but after 2 weeks, and this was back before the K gun, so it was before the no huddle 3 receiver set. We were just doing 2 receivers, and then the third guy would come in on third downs, and the fourth guy never played. So the first 2 games, I never played in the game. Jim Kelly goes to Marv on Tuesday, which is the player's day off, and says, listen, we didn't draft Beebe to stay on the sideline. We need to get him on the field. So they cut Chris Burkett that day. That's the power of Jim Kelly. And I moved into the third receiver slot. And so my first game that I got to play in was the Astrodome in Houston. And the first DB that I go up against is Chris Dishman.
Wow.
And
Remember him.
the first pass that ever went my way was a 63-yard bomb touchdown against Chris. And so that's the way I broke into the NFL. And that's the honest truth.
Wow.
Yeah.
When you're playing with such players as Thurman Thomas, Jim Kelly, the great Andre Reed. I mean, you got Bruce Smith. I mean, you got what was his name? Talley?
Daryl Talley, Cornelius
mean,
Bennett.
Yeah, Cornelius Bennett. I mean, you guys were like stacked.
Loaded.
You got drafted by them, and you walk on that field and you see all this greatness, this Hall of Fame talent. Does it get to you a little bit that you really have to perform now? Because they expect you to perform to their level.
Yeah.
You guys were the powerhouses of the AFC. Let's be real.
Yeah. We were. And yes, I don't think I was fazed by all that, but I knew I had to perform. Mm-hmm. One thing that I learned over my career, and this is what we kind of again stated earlier, and I teach a lot today, the 2 biggest reasons why guys don't make it, and we're talking football now, but this could be just in life or women in sports. The first reason, you don't think you can. If you don't think you can, you're not going to. Right. Okay, so you got to be able to believe it. Second thing is guys are too lazy. They have no idea what it takes to be great, man. You got to work your tail off, because if you don't work at it and then you get into that pressure situation, most likely you're not going to perform, not to the level you have to. So It has to be so repetitious that it becomes second nature to you to get off the line of scrimmage, to run this certain route, to catch a ball from Jim Kelly or Brett Favre. I mean, it just has to become second nature. You can't be thinking. You got to perform. And the only way you get to that is train hard.
You've been in the league long enough and you saw the work ethic. Now, what's your take on today's NFL and the way the players? I'm seeing I'm maybe on the outside looking in. I grew up in the same era frame you did. When you played a team sport, you played as a team. There was no individuality. Now I see the NFL becoming more of, what am I going to get from this? And I'm worrying about my longevity. And the reason why I say that, it was an honor to even get picked to go to the Pro Bowl. Now you don't hear people talking about going to the Pro Bowl. What has changed over the years, and how does that make you feel, knowing that you came from prime stock era where people work to get to the pinnacle of their craft?
Yeah, the days of Walter Payton, Barry Sanders, Jerry Rice, I mean, guys like that were just humble guys, but yet very confident in their abilities. Mm-hmm. You had to be. Team guys, Thurman Thomas's. I mean, I'll be honest with you, Thurman, I think, enjoyed me scoring a touchdown as much as he scored. Right. He was a fire pistol, but man, he was a team guy. Loved him. James Lofton, who I played with, just a humble, great Hall of Fame guy. He enjoyed success of other guys. Yeah, it's sad. Now, in saying that, I still think there are those players. It's just there's less of them. And there's more of that vocal diva type player out there. And you can see it dismantles teams. And without naming names, these guys, they come in and they dismantle teams. Yeah. They just do. And I think this is where coaching comes in. And this is why, first of all, one of the reasons I'm not coaching the NFL. I had a chance in 2005 to go back to Buffalo with Coach Levy when he was the general manager. And I said no. And this was one of the reasons is I'm in it for the purity. And to be honest with you, this is why I'm at the D3 level. The transfer portal really hasn't affected it much. Nil money hasn't affected it, you know, and you find guys that are paying to play. They have to have a job to pay for their college.
Mhm.
So, you know, they're passionate about what they do.
Right.
Man, I love the D3 level. Now, I don't think I'll ever leave it for that reason.
When you look at the portal, you're in college now working. How how much has the portal changed the ability to have a good college football team?
Well, at the FBS level, ridiculous. I mean, and that's why guys like, I think, and I don't know this personally, I think Nick Saban got out because of that reason. He felt like he was more of an agent than he was a college coach anymore. How do you teach ego?
Yeah.
It's tough. Now, it hasn't affected our level. Not saying that we haven't lost a couple players, because we've lost two. That's it. One of them, his dad lost his job, so he couldn't afford to pay anymore. So I helped him get, you know, a scholarship, which he did. He went FCS. I really believe this, that if you build a culture that you really genuinely love the guy, and they know it, because you can't fool a player. They're going to know if you really care about him. And if you build that culture, chances of players wanting to leave that, it's not going to happen.
Right.
Not very much at all. Matter of fact, I'll give you a great example. Jalen Jordan, who was our star defensive tackle last year. I mean, this guy's a beast and has a chance at the next level. He really does. He's that good. One of the top defensive tackles in the country at D3 level for sure. And he came to me and he says, Coach, I'm thinking about transfer portal, but I don't want to hurt your feelings. And I don't, you know, I'm just not sure what to do. And I looked at him and I said, listen, if you can get an FBS, because he wanted to play in a big stadium that 80,000 people were there. I said, if you can find an FBS school to give you a full ride scholarship and guarantee you pretty much that you're going to play, or at least get a real good shot at playing, I said, I'll help you pack. I said, but if you don't, then you might as well just stay. Well, he got 3 FCS offers, which are smaller Division I schools, and he stayed, and he's paying to play, and he gave up 3 offers. So I really believe if you do it right and love the guys, chance of you losing players is going to be limited to other programs.
Let's switch the topic real quick. Let's talk about the woman of your life. That is a beautiful story, just seeing it on paper. You married your wife, who you've been knowing since kindergarten. What was her role in your journey? She had to see the good, the bad, and the ugly. What was her inspiration to your life?
Yeah. Well, first of all, this is why I thought Yolanda was going to be here with us, right? She was going to be asked this question.
Oh, okay.
So tell her I'm disappointed she's not here. Anyway, yeah, like I said, we were born in the same hospital 8 months apart. Crazy. And we met in kindergarten, and she's the only girl I ever dated. We started dating junior in high school. And my dad told me after dating her through high school, he looked at me, he says, son, don't screw this one up, buddy. And so I didn't. We dated 7 years and we got married. We have 4 kids ourselves, now 5 grandkids. Absolutely the second most important decision I've ever made in my entire life. The first one was my faith, and the second one was the wife that I chose. And that's why coaching young men today, I tell them that. I said, guys, don't screw that part up. Find yourself a great woman and don't ever let her go. And that was the advice I got from my father.
What's the secret, Don? We see,
Yeah.
many couples
break
up, but this is a woman you've been knowing 8 months apart, same hospital, kindergarten. It's almost like the movie What Dreams May Come with Robin. I can't think of his name. You guys been together that long. What's the secret to success here? Because let's get real. There's going to be times where you have disagreements, but what's the recipe for success for so long?
Yeah. 3 things I would say. Number 1, time. Give her time. Give your kids time. Okay. No matter how busy you are in your job, that can't come before your wife and can't come before your kids. Number 2, communicate. Okay. Guys don't like to communicate. Guys, you know, they get busy, they come home, flip on the tube, whatever it is, right? What's a woman want to do? Communicate. They want to talk. Well, give her that pleasure. Okay. You might not want to, but do it anyway. So sit down on the porch, sit down on the back deck, whatever it is, just sit down with her and have no distraction. Put your phone away, put the tube off, and give her give her your communication. Number 3, trust. I think once you give her 1 and 2, okay, the third one happens. She has absolutely no rhyme or reason to know that I would ever consider leaving her for another woman, and nor have I ever thought about her. That's trust, and that will never leave. So you do those 3 things, it'll last.
What's the one moment that you remember out of all the years you guys been together that you're really thankful that she was there?
Mm-hmm. Oh wow, there's so many, Andre. I obviously during the tough times, but you cherish the great times too.
Right.
Celebrating her with the Super Bowl on the field when she came on the field with me. I mean, those were great times. The birth of our children, now our grandchildren. But the ones that she is so unselfish. I have never met a woman like my wife that is so unselfish, and she does everything, for me, and our kids and our family. You know what? Because of that reason, the least I could do would give her my time, communication, and trust and love, because she deserves it. There's no doubt. So I think in the tough times when I broke my leg, and had to miss games, when I lost my best friend from high school to a drunk driver, when I lost my grandma, who was so special to me, she was always there, and she will always be there. And we have a pact with God. If I go, she goes. We go at the same time. We're not doing this life without each other, just so you know.
You have a son, Chad, right?
Yeah.
That got drafted, Minnesota Vikings. What was that like for you? And what did he when that time came for him? What kind of advice did he come to you with, and what kind of advice did you share with him?
Yeah, well, I never really went to him. I wanted him to come to me and ask, because in training athletes for so many years, and then coaching athletes so many years, I saw so many dads, and moms too, but dads especially, were so involved and invested. It was like the kid was just like, "Dad, leave me alone," and that happens way more than the latter.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to be that dad, and for all the more reasons, being a former professional athlete, that would have just amplified on top of my son with the pressure. So I didn't want to do that at all. So we have a tremendous relationship of respect, for each other, and care. I told him after his freshman year, when he was a freshman in high school, he was 5'1" and a half, 106 pounds. And I said to him, I call him Bubba. I said, Bubba, I said, what do you want to do after high school? And I'll never forget it. We were walking out of the locker room because I was his coach in high school. And he said, Dad, I want to play, college football. And I said, okay. I said, at what level? NAI Division III. What? Dad, I want to play in the biggest stadium possible. So you want to play Division I? I said. He goes, yeah. So I wasn't deterring of it. I'm thinking in my mind, 5'1" ain't never going to happen, right? That's what I'm thinking. But I never said that to him. No way. I was just the opposite. I said, son, if that's what you want to do, then Pops is going to have to train you. We're going to have to train year round. But I want you to understand this first. Okay. I'm not getting you out of bed. I'm not going to force you to eat these meals. I'm not going to force you to do this and force you. You're going to force yourself, and you're going to force Dad to train you. I said, I'm all in. If that's what you want to do, I'll help you fulfill your dream. And that's the journey we went down.
Wow. When he got drafted, how did that make you feel?
Well, he was a free agent. Now, keep in mind, my son has probably more of an unbelievable story than I even had, believe this or not, but from a completely different perspective. Meaning from his sophomore year all the way through the end of his NFL career, which was 12 seasons of football, 11 of them ended on reconstructive surgery or season-ending injury. What? He had more setbacks and more punched in the gut moments than I've ever seen in my entire life of any athlete.
Really?
Yeah, even his 4 years with the Minnesota Vikings, 3 of them were on IR. His junior year, which is a big year, right, for high school to get a Division I scholarship, is the junior year. He broke his collarbone a week before the season started, came back, played 4 games, and broke his collarbone, his other one, in the semifinal game to go to the state championship that year. And that sucker, I'm telling you, I don't say this because he's my son, but he is the toughest dude I've ever been around. He suited up with the broken collarbone, 1 week later. And if I wouldn't have seen the x-ray, I would have never believed that story. And I only allowed him to play because I didn't want to live with my son for the rest of my life, not giving him that opportunity. But I said, you're not going to take Advil. We're not going to shoot the thing up. I said, if you can handle pain, you'll play. After the first half, he caught a ball in the third quarter right in front of me, and he grimaced so loud, Andre. I said, I had to stop him in the middle of the game, and I said, son, I can't do this anymore. Right. I gotta pull you. And so I pulled him in the third quarter, and it was the hardest decision I ever had to do.
Wow.
Yeah.
I gotta talk to him. That's crazy, because most time when you have those kind of injuries, your career is pretty much
over.
Teams won't even take a role with you. You know what I mean? So it shows that he has something that these other teams saw to put him back on those rosters.
Yeah. You know how he got invited to the Minnesota Vikings camp was this. I didn't know anybody there, you know, but the strength and conditioning coach at Northern Illinois, okay, had a friend that was a scout with the Minnesota Vikings, and the Minnesota Vikings scout called Brad, was his name, and he says, "Who'd we miss from Northern from our pro day?" And he said, "Beebe." He says, "Well, he's hurt all the time. Trust me, I've never trained a kid that bounces back like Beebe. You got to just bring him in. The kid can play." So they brought him in. Now, this is going to sound crazy, but it's true. They brought him in in a 3-day mini camp, okay, as a complete unknown, had to pay his own way. That never happens. Yeah. Okay, he gets there. After the first day, nobody talking to. At the second day, the wideout coach was talking to him. At the third day, the head coach, Coach Zimmer, was following him around the whole day. At the end of that day, said, "We want to invite you to the camp in July." He goes into the camp as the 12th receiver out of 12 that they brought in. They had to activate him, I think, after the third game, because Zimmer came out and said, "Nobody can guard him in practice. We might as well activate him." So they activate him, and who'd they cut to make the team that year? Laquan Treadwell. Laquan Treadwell, just so you know, was arguably the greatest wide receiver in Illinois history.
Yeah.
That went to Ole Miss, broke all the records, was a first-round pick of the Minnesota Vikings, and I think he was in his fourth year when Chad came in as a rookie, and Chad took his spot on the roster. That's crazy.
And I don't think he played too much after that.
No, he didn't
either. Yeah.
He didn't.
Wow.
Yeah. So Chad is a living testimony, as I am as well, and a lot of other guys too. But Chad is living testimony that no matter how many times you get punched in the gut, tomorrow's another day. Get up. You can't give up. You just can't give up, because if you give up, I know the result. You lose. But if you keep going, eventually you're going to win. And that's Chad.
Who were some of the wide receivers that you mentored your game after when you were playing?
Well, I mean, obviously I studied Jerry Rice. I mean, why not study the best? I mean, you could argue Jerry Rice is the greatest football player in NFL history per his position, for sure. Tom Brady was the only other one you can argue. But Jerry, I studied him, and lucky enough, I had Charlie Joyner, who was my coach for 4 years in Buffalo, 18 years, Hall of Fame wideout. Amazing. I had the two greatest, I really believe this. I had the two greatest wide receiver coaches in NFL history. Charlie Joyner for 4 years in Buffalo, and Sherm Lewis, who was the offensive coordinator, helped wideouts as well with the Green Bay Packers. Well, if you don't know Sherm Lewis was Jerry Rice's wideout coach within the 49ers during the 80s.
Wow.
I mean, that's what I got, right? So I was very blessed to have two great ones, and they taught me how to be a receiver. They really did.
Joyner was a great route runner and a great deep threat. What were your weaknesses when you got to NFL? Because the pace is a lot faster.
Yep.
Timing is crucial. What were you lacking, and what did they bring to your game to elevate you to where you became great at your position?
Yeah, great question. Two things jump off one, getting off the jam. I never faced a bump and run in high school or collegiately. Nobody would ever press me, so I had no experience with it.
Right.
And secondly, and more importantly, and this is kind of advanced wide receiver stuff, and this really came from Charlie Joyner, is he taught me how to make my route look full speed, because I would generate so much speed into my routes, a 10-yard speed cut or a comeback route from 18 back to 15, or just a hitch route. I would generate so much speed that was taking me too long to slow down to get back out of the cut. So I had to learn how to make something look full speed, but I was really going about 3/4.
Really?
And so I had to really generate run, because your best route runners, I mean, I'm going to tell you something here. You might not know. I don't know. Your best route runners of all time are your 4.6 40s, because they can't create enough speed where it takes them so long to get out. And it's the perfect speed that they can generate getting out of a cut. And that's why Jerry, I think, is the greatest route runner of all time in my mind.
Let's talk about your speed.
Yeah.
Talk about tell me the 4 most inspirational moments with the Buffalo Bills for you.
Well, the first pass that ever went my way was 63-yard bomb. I mean, that's a crazy way to break in to the league, right?
Yeah.
Bouncing off my head in the Cleveland playoff game.
I remember that.
It's a historic play. The Leon Lett play, to be honest with you, Andre, wasn't for me initially. But after time went on, how important it was in people's lives.
Yeah.
And still today, 28 years later or whatever, 30 years later,
Yeah.
it is a significant play in my life because of how how it all evolved. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but those 3 jump out. Just playing with the guys in Buffalo. I mean, we had such a fraternity. I think there was 24, 25 guys that went to all 4 Super Bowls.
Yeah.
It's such a great fraternity of men. When we get back together, it's like we never missed a beat.
Really?
You can always tell your best friends that when you get together, it's like you just saw each other, right? I mean, it's that kind of friendship.
When you guys get back together, and I can tell you guys have a great friendship, but there's still voids that are missing. When you go back and you look at 4 Super Bowl appearances and didn't win them, and you guys get together, what do you guys say to each other? It's always what if question. What is those what if questions for you guys?
I think the only thing that some of the guys on that team would be that they stayed in the week of the game when we were in Tampa or LA instead of maybe going out and partying a little bit too much. I think that would be the only thing and I'm talking about some of the players. I'm not talking about all of them. But other than that, man, we have no regrets. I mean, I'll be honest with you, we played hard. We loved each other. We had the greatest coach of all time as far as a man of character, and Coach Levy. We had the greatest fans. I mean, they are just phenomenal fans. They really are. They're so genuine and blue collar people. We had the ingredients of just memorable moments. And if I was to go back in time, man, I'd go back to Buffalo in a heartbeat. No doubt about it.
Which was your toughest Super Bowl, and why?
Loss.
Just experience in general, because you played in 4.
Yeah.
Each team brought a different feel to the game, a different skill set. When you look at all 4, which was the toughest and why?
Mm-hmm. Man, I'll be honest, Andre, that's the first time I've ever been asked that question. My initial reaction, they were all tough. They're all 4 of them. None of them were fun walking off the field. Obviously, the first one was the closest. Mm-hmm. So you felt, golly, we were so close to winning it. But the other ones were probably tougher because we just tanked it mentally. And I'm gonna tell you why we lost in Buffalo and we didn't lose in Green Bay. Buffalo had more talent. No question. You look at the Bills team, they had more talent. So why did we pull it off?
Right.
After experience coaching and playing for so long now, as I reflect back on that, we didn't have the mental capacity as a team, and I'm talking about the leaders really of the team. Okay, and being in the last few, I was one of those leaders. But here's what happened: the 4th Super Bowl, and this will give you a great idea. The 4th Super Bowl, we're playing in Atlanta, we're playing the Cowboys, right? We're up at halftime. I think 13-10 was the score. We're up at halftime, and we're really controlling the line of scrimmage, and we felt pretty good. So we're going to the locker room, and the guys are talking. We're like, hey, listen, we get the ball first coming out. Let's put it in the end zone, get up 10, put this thing away. We're going to finally win this crazy game. I mean, that's how we felt. When we come out, within the first few plays, Thurman fumbled it. James Washington, the safety of the Cowboys, picks it up and scores a touchdown. Now there's 11 minutes, 12 minutes left in the third quarter. We have the whole half left and we're down 4 points. You come to the sideline, deer in headlight. Here we go again. Everybody's quiet. Nobody's motivating anybody. Nobody was pissing and moaning. Nobody's yelling and screaming at each other. We were just quiet.
Yeah.
We were just nobody encouraging. So what happens? We don't get another touchdown. They go on. Emmett Smith runs it right down our throat. 3 straight touchdowns, and they dominated us. Okay, in that second half. Same team as the first half, completely different mental midgets in the second. Now, fast forward 2 years, I'm with the Packers. We go up early on Drew Bledsoe and the Patriots, and it's 10-0. Somewhere in the early second quarter, all of a sudden, Bledsoe goes boom, boom, hits 2 big plays. It's 14-10. Sometime in that second quarter, you go to the sideline now, and I'll never forget it. And I was one of them, but Eugene Robinson, Leroy Butler, Reggie, Brett, all of them were going like, guys, these guys aren't that good. We're fine. We're good. We got these guys, man. There's no way they can play with us. Halftime score, 27-14. Okay. We scored 17 unanswered points. And then Reggie takes the second half over with 3 straight sacks, setting a Super Bowl record, and we blow them out. Now, what's the difference? Mentally, I'm telling you, the team that handles adversity in the big moments and big games are going to win those playoff and Super Bowl games. We were fine in the regular season, and we were fine even in the playoffs. Dude, night we were down 35-3 to Houston and came back and won.
Right.
But we couldn't do it in the Super Bowl. And I think we couldn't handle the pressure of a Super Bowl moment, and that's why we lost.
That's thank you for sharing that, because that's always been a question in my mind. But when the audience hears this, who knows that era, they will find it hard to believe, because you got too many vocal people on that team. You can't tell me you got Bruce Smith, Andre Reed, you got Jim Kelly. You got too many people, but to sit here and say that they didn't have the ability to, it's unbelievable.
Quiet as a church mouse, I'm telling you. And they would tell you that.
And I think saw it. Do you got to tell me? I saw it. I was like, dude, your ass kicked.
Yeah. And all of them, hard-working guys. I mean, look at Bruce Smith. I mean, this guy's 295 pounds, the greatest ever play, and his body fat's like 10%. I mean, if anybody knows body fat, that's so hard to do as a big man like that. That's how hard he worked. Thurman Thomas, phenomenal. All of them. Andre Reed, I mean, an incredible workout. Daryl.
His face was just like, I remember the last time I saw his face, it was like, you can tell he just wanted to just walk away from the damn game.
Yeah, he did. He really did. And I felt bad because Daryl really was our leader. Daryl was.
You could tell he commanded that team. And you could see during that last loss that he was like, I said, that dude ain't gonna come, that dude's not coming back to play no more. He's tired.
Yeah, and it wasn't that he's tired, he was tired mentally. I mean, he was just, it was tough, Andre. I'll be honest with you. And I think if we did have any regrets, we would, if we got that moment back again, which we never will, we would change our attitude and start encouraging and uplifting everybody and get ticked off, man, in the right way. Let's go. And that's what happened in Green Bay. And I think it really was the leaders in Green Bay that changed it around. Now, obviously, the guys in Green Bay didn't experience, 2 in a row, 3 in a row, right, that affected us the 4th one. But think about this. Go back to the 3rd Super Bowl in Dallas, in Pasadena, when we played Dallas the first time. We had 9 turnovers. Yeah. 9. You're not going to win a football game with 9 turnovers. And listen, trust me on this one. Turnovers come from lack of confidence and lack of ability to make a play. That's how turnovers happen. And we had 9.
When you go to Green Bay, with the experience that you had, what was it like playing with Brett Favre? What was it like playing with Reggie White? What did they expect from you?
Well, they when I first met those guys, they were just like, hey, we just looking for another piece, the final piece, one of those final pieces. Desmond Howard came in that same year, just one of those final pieces to let's put us over the top and win the Saints, because they had gone to the NFC Championship game the year before and lost to Dallas. Mm-hmm. So they were close before we got there in '96. And so I think, guys like me and Desmond and other guys that they brought in that year were just kind of the final pieces to put it over the top because it takes everybody, man.
I think when Des
One,
ran that ball on that kickoff all the way, that was a game changer. He was
yeah, it really was. And
wow.
yeah, it really was. And I was fortunate to throw the touchdown block, the last guy that was going to get him. And Desmond actually gave me that ball. He gave me the game ball because I threw that last block for him. So it's a ball that I cherish in my den.
Before we wrap up, let's go to what you're really known for outside of being a great father, great mentor, great football player. You're known for knocking that ball out. What happened when all that? Take me down the fiasco and what happened on the sideline and so forth. Even though you
Sure.
guys lost, that was still a memorable moment.
Yeah. Well,
Because it shows your speed. That's that.
yeah. Well, I'm gonna go from two different perspectives. One, if I was talking to parents, this would be my message. And then I'll give you what my message would be if I'm talking to kids,
Okay.
which I do these quite often. If I'm talking to an adult group, the reason I made that play was my parents. I don't think your character is a switch that you can turn on and off. Either it's who you are or you're not. And when you have a split second to make the decision, it's going to be your character. Marvin Levy always used to say, in every game that you play, your character is going to be revealed, good or bad. Make sure it's good. And so when it got to that point, I'm running a fly pattern, a go route down the left side of the field. They don't even know how far it was, roughly 30, 40 yards down the field. And all of a sudden I look, Frank Reich was in, Jim was kept hurt, and he was a quarterback. He fumbled the football. And it was like right away, Leon picks the football up. And I didn't know who was Leon. I just saw it was a star in his chest, right? So all I did was react. I could have thought about, gosh, should I go? And no, you react. And as you remember, it happened inside the 1 yard line. So if I'd have thought about it for just a second, I'd have never made the play.
Right.
So how you react to something is your true character. So as I'm running them down to answer your question, what in the world am I thinking, right? Running right in front of the Dallas bench. This is what I was thinking. How am I going to tackle this 300-pound man? I was like, there's no way. I was going to jump on the dude's back, man. He had rolled me right out of the back of the end zone. It'd have been a football folly, right?
Yeah.
But no, Leon made my job easy by putting it off to the side of his body. He said it's something he learned from Michael Irvin. So you take it from there. And I knocked the ball out of his hand, and it became the Buffalo Bills ball at the 1 yard or the 20-yard line going the other way. Our lives changed. From that moment, our lives changed. One, for Leon, not so great. He's taken a lot of heat for that play. It still does. But initially, it was awful because people bet on that money and they lost money.
Yeah.
I did a Sports Illustrated article with Leon 2 months after the Super Bowl that year because Sports Illustrated, it become such a big thing in America. They wanted to do something on it.
Right.
So we met in West Palm Beach, Florida. I remember sitting in the coffee shop. I'm always early. And in walked this huge man through the threshold of this coffee shop. And I've never met him. I got up, and I'm kind of a sense of humor guy. And I went over and broke the ice. I said, Leon, shook his hand, and I said, Leon, listen, I agreed to do this on one occasion only, or on one instance only, that there be no physical abuse. Well, find out he was a gentle giant of a guy. I absolutely love Leon Lett. Phenomenal individual.
Right.
And he used the play. He still uses that play of what not to do. I use the play of what to do, but we come to the same conclusion at the end, never give up. And so I got to hand it to Leon. And if I'm talking to kids, I always say this, you're going to win games, you're going to lose games. No matter what you're doing in life, you're going to lose and you're going to win.
Right.
I said, you can always walk off that field as a loser in that game if you run Leon Lett down. If you give it everything you got, man, you can live with the result because son, you're going to lose. Daughter, you're going to lose.
Right.
It's if you don't give it everything you got and you know it, buddy, when you walk off that field, you're going to have to live with that regret. Now, I don't want regrets in life. And that's what I tell young people.
What are you doing now, Don? What are you doing now?
Yep. So I just wrote a book, which would have been the second book. And I'm the head football coach at Aurora University. And I just finished my 5th year.
How can the viewers reach out to you, get a copy of your book, support you, your mission, and to know more about your journey? Because you got a lot more stories to tell and write.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up. DonBeebe.com. You can go to DonBeebe.com and find 6 Rings from Nowhere, which is my life story. and some of the stories that we shared today. But the one that I'm really, really encouraged about is this new devotional book that I just wrote, and it's titled Never Giving Up. And on the title is me running down Leon.
Really?
And they're in there, it's 12 stories of things that God allowed to happen to me that were tragic, that were tough things as athletes we go through. Coach doesn't like me, I get cut from a team, whatever it is, right? We can always point fingers and blame others. No, look in the mirror. Look in the mirror. And what can I do to be better tomorrow? And so I wrote this devotional to help people, especially athletes, to get through whatever, pee-wee football, a girls varsity basketball team, whatever you do. If you play sports, it's a great devotional. And they can get it at donbeebe.com. And I hope that it helps them navigate through life.
Don, I appreciate you really taking the time out to come and be a part of this show. I guarantee you will be in the Hall of Fame. Hopefully I get to live to see that moment, but you will definitely be in the Hall of Fame. You're definitely an inspiration to the individuals out there who feel like they can't make it. Make sure you guys subscribe and get his book. Don, once again, thank you for coming on the show. This has been another exciting episode of the Andre The Beast Crayton
Thanks, Andre. Appreciate it.
show.